Happy Monday, Valley Bible Youth. Rolling into a new week. Hope that you guys are doing well in our stay-at-home time. Back in Matthew 5. I know you guys are excited about Matthew 5, and so am I. And we're looking today at Matthew 5, verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the meek. That is a challenging word. In fact, the word there for meek is only found 4 times in the New Testament. This is one of them. Some Bibles say gentle. Sometimes we perceive this just simply as humility, and it in one sense it is humility. It's more of the action of humility, though, is kind of the best way to think about it. Someone who's humble has many actions that represent that, and so meekness is an action, and that we only find it 4 times in the New Testament is somewhat evasive to us, right? It's hard to nail down or to define. However, I believe that's because no man is truly meek. I'm not meek, you know. I don't know any brothers who I would say that man is 100% meek, because it's an attribute or something that we really only find in Jesus. And so our first verse to look at with that is Matthew 11, verse 20. Some of you are really familiar with it. Jesus says, "Come to me, everyone who's weary and burdened, and I will give you rest, for I am meek and humble in heart." Now I'm looking at it here, and I gave you the wrong verse. It's Matthew 11, 29, not 20. 28 and 29. "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle," and the word is meek. "I am meek and humble in heart." So you see there a distinction between meek and humble, that they are the same, but there's a reason that they're different. He says, "You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So Jesus, describes himself as meek. That may be almost something that seems contradictory, right? Who could describe themselves as meek? If I told you guys, I'm really meek, it's almost suggesting that I'm not, because I'm telling you that. But Jesus, so many examples throughout the Gospels of his life where we look and are just with eyes wide going, wow, this man truly is meek. And that kind of takes us to the next point of the end of Matthew, or not too much further on in Matthew chapter 21, verse 5, where Jesus quotes from a place in the prophets from Zechariah. And when this is quoted in Zechariah, right, it's before Jesus, and the prophecy is that your king will come to you meek and riding on a colt, on a baby donkey, or I don't know how old a colt is. I'm sure some of you do. And so it says here, "Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you gentle, mounted on a donkey, even a colt, the foal of a beast of burden." This is an interesting story, right? Because here in Matthew 21, as you read through it, as I was thinking about this story years ago, you have a couple things going on. Jesus sends his disciples ahead of him and says, "Hey, go into that town, ask this guy if you can take his donkey," or really he just says, "Take that donkey, and if he says anything to you, tell them this: the Son of Man has need of it." So the apostles do that. He gets on this donkey, And years ago, when I was thinking about this, it occurred to me that surely Jesus would have known where the stallion was in that town, where the thoroughbred or the Frisian stallion, the most expensive, prized, beautiful horse in all of Jerusalem. Surely he knew where that was, and he could have sent his disciples to get that. And here's an example of meekness. Meekness is power restrained or under control. It's someone who has authority over other people, and he doesn't practice it in a harsh way. And so Jesus, knowing where the stallion would be, I mean, he has to fulfill this prophecy, obviously, from Zechariah, but in not being like us, he chose to ride on a colt or on a donkey, right? On an ass. Jesus decides to ride into Jerusalem on an ass. And we don't probably relate to that very well. You know, this is where we start to probably see we are not meek. We like our power and our authority to be known. We like our talent to be seen. We're taught to show everyone how good we can be, rather than taking a posture of meekness in the way that we act, in the way that we relate to others, in the way that we just function in life. So we see him ride in on a donkey into his city, right? He calls it the city of the great king, to his town, where, you know, he is destined to reign from over the nations. So meekness is power restrained. I want us to look at John chapter 11, because it's the best example that I know of in seeing a picture of that. You know, I'll tell you a story that represents someone who wasn't meek. You know, this is one of the best examples I can think of, is that I was probably 23, 24 years old, and I had this Ford Explorer that I loved. You know, it was a Ford Explorer Sport. I'd zip around town in it, and I was living in Kansas City, and this one night, my friend with me, her name was Paige, and we had gone and eaten Chipotle, and we were on our way back to our base, and we looked over to the left, and out in this field were like 300 deer. The sun was setting, and it was all snowy, and there were these 300 deer out there. And the snow was deep, and I thought that I recognized the place where I was on the road and that I could just pull off into a parking area. What happened was we pulled off to look at these deer, and that snow was much deeper than we thought, and it was not the parking area, and my Explorer just kind of rolled to a stop and sank because it was wet underneath the snow. Well, lo and behold, we're totally stuck. You know, we're looking at those deer, and we're realizing, well, this wasn't worth it because now we're stuck. And it was just about that time when a park ranger just pulls up, and of course he thinks we pulled off the road here and we're making out or something, or that I was off-roading and showing off my truck, which we were doing neither of those things. And he gets out and comes down. Oh, you're stuck? And he said, don't worry, I'm not going to write you a ticket. Let's just get you out of here. So I call my friend. He brings his truck and he pulls me out. And I don't know what happened between his words and the time I got pulled out, but he says, I finally get out and I'm getting ready to get my truck and leave. And he said, well, actually, I'm going to have to write you a ticket because when that guy pulled you out, he said, you left some ruts over there and you've done damage. And now I'm going to have to write you a ticket for that. And I remember my friend who was there got really upset with the park ranger because he had told us, I'm not going to write a ticket for this. And there was this dynamic where he found out we were Christians. He found out we were from this Christian mission base. And within that time frame, he processed in his mind, and he was definitely not a Christian from the way that he spoke to us. He seemed to just want to use his power then to afflict upon me as a person what he could. And so he punished me because he could, and because it seemed that he didn't like the fact that we were Christians. So I went to court. I had to pay a $300 fine or something like that, and just a big ordeal. But what happened was a man who was not meek decided to enforce his power and, in fact, break his original word over me as a person because he had the authority to do so. Jesus is not like that. And so in John chapter 11, I want to, every gospel talks about Jesus before Pilate. Pilate is the one who essentially has authority to crucify him or not. And I want to us to read this together. I don't know why I told you to go to John chapter 11. I meant John chapter 19. Sorry, guys. John chapter 19. Got to do this live and on the fly, so no editing. There's mistakes. Bear with me. So John chapter 19, verse 1. Pilate then took Jesus and scourged him. Okay, so that's the context. Jesus is before Pilate. Pilate is the ruler he's the Roman authority over all of Jerusalem. So he's, in one sense, the highest power there. And Jesus is before him. He doesn't find any guilt in him previously in John 18, but then he takes Jesus and scourges him. And then they put the purple robe on him. They begin to come up to him and say, "Hail, King of the Jews," and give him slaps in the face. And then Pilate brings him out. They put the crown of thorns on his head. And I want you to think about this picture, okay, of Jesus. He's the creator of the heavens and the earth. He's the most powerful person, literally, in the world. There has never been someone more powerful. And so you get down, he's standing before the man who's perceived to be the most powerful man in the land at that time. What happens is, you get down to verse 9 or 10, and Pilate says to him, because Jesus isn't speaking, he says, "You don't speak to me? Do you not know that I have the authority to release you? And I have authority to crucify you?" So Pilate here is talking to Jesus through his authority. I have the power and I have the authority to do these things to you. And imagine you're looking at this fragile man who's has a crown of thorns. He's not asserting any power. And this is what he says. Jesus said, "You would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above." Wow, what a powerful statement. You would have no authority over me unless it had been given to you from above. He says in another place, my kingdom, when he's speaking to Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. If it were, then my servants would fight for me. I think of Jesus in the garden. Peter cuts off the guy's ear and he says, "Do you not think I could call 10,000s, myriads of angels right now if I needed to, Peter?" But that's not the point of what's happening, Peter. What's being shown is my meekness and my willingness to sacrifice myself for the sin of the world. So Jesus looks into the face of Pilate, the most powerful man in the world, who is about to crucify him, and just says, "No, man, you don't really have any power, but it's been given to you from my Father, and that's why you can crucify me." Jesus is our example of meekness. He's the only example we have. truly, of what it truly looks like to be meek. All of the power in his hands to destroy Pilate. Literally, he could have just breathed in his breath or snapped his fingers, and Pilate and everyone could have dropped dead. That's his power. And yet he submitted himself to them. He let them slap him in the face. That is something that is just marvelous and beautiful to peer into. And I pray that it is the example throughout our week that we meditate on this week of meekness. Help us, Lord Jesus. Bless you guys. Look forward to hearing your comments and in the commenting on this video.